added back to our judiciary a sum of Kenya shillings, 1.5 billion shillings, to ensure, especially the completion of courts, to ensure there is enough court space to prosecute the corruption cases that are ongoing and other cases that have been lying in our courts without being finalized. On the Parliament Service Commission, Honorable Speaker, there was a proposal to reduce the parliamentary budget, especially on recurrent expenditure, by a figure of 5 billion shillings, which would have translated to a reduction of up to 40% of our recurrent expenditure on various expenditure items. Honorable Speaker, we have rationalized this together with all other departments in government. And I wish to thank the NASA coalition, and especially the ODM political party, who in their ODM did call, and I saw that, Honorable Speaker, for real austerity measures. And in that spirit, because the minority leader is a member of the Budget and Appropriations Committee, we did ensure that we have real austerity measures cutting across all departments of government, be it Parliament, be it the Judiciary, be it the Executive. And we have rationalized this to ensure that our cuts average about 15 to 20% on recurrent expenditure items. I think it's important, Honorable Speaker, to mention that some of the things that related to members of Parliament that we did in April have not been touched because they were in personal emoluments, issues to do with house allowances, issues to do with members' compensation for mileage are in personal emoluments, and we've ensured that are not touched, because those are things that touch on personal emoluments, salaries and wages of Kenyans, because members of Parliament are Kenyans, and therefore those issues will not be touched, Honorable Speaker. The items that we have touched on, Honorable Speaker, I have said are those issues.
Honour members, at least if you do not want to listen, I want to hear. I want to hear.
Thank you. Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I was saying what has been touched basically is on issues to do with vote items on travel, especially domestic travel and foreign travel, but to a large extent on foreign travel, Honorable Speaker. And therefore, and issues to do with training, those also have been touched, and it is across the board to ensure that there is fairness across the board, be it in the executive, in all ministries. And therefore, I want also to call on government and all of us in our departmental committees, in the ministries that we oversight, to ensure, because that is our cardinal responsibility, Speaker, as members of Parliament, to ensure that these austerity measures become real and there is no wastage at all in all the departments that we oversight. Honorable Speaker, with those very few or many remarks, because of time, I wish to request members that in the spirit, I said, of give and take, that we do understand where we are coming from as a country. We understand, Honorable Speaker, that in the absence of a balanced budget in this country being able to beg for 2 minutes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I was saying, in the absence of a balanced budget, we were able to finance all our operations in government through taxation. Honorable Speaker, it is important that we ensure that the fiscal deficit that we are committed to with our development partners to be able to finance not just this budget, but also future budgets, Honorable Speaker. And not just the financing of future budgets, Honorable Speaker, to create confidence in the economy, Honorable Speaker. For any foreign investor to be able to come and invest in this country, we must be able to demonstrate by action that we are indeed a disciplined country in terms of fiscal management. And therefore wish to beg members to do support this, this motion and these supplementary appropriations that have been tabled. And I wish to ask the Leader of Majority to second. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Leader of Majority.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, allow me from the onset to appreciate the expenditure manner in which the Budget and Appropriation Committee has executed its mandate in the processing of the supplementary estimates number 1 for the financial year 2018-2019 in line with Article 223 of the Constitution and Section 44 of the Public Finance Management Act 2012 and Standing Order 243. Mr. Speaker, this is the first supplementary estimate that is coming before this House for the financial year 2018-2019. Mr. Speaker, let me say it, this is a very unique supplementary budget, as it is being considered barely 3 months into the financial year, and it is in the best interest of the country so as to achieve our development agenda and the Big Four. Speaker, this House recalls in June of this year, we approved a total expenditure of 2.53 trillion that resulted in a fiscal deficit that was to be financed through both domestic borrowing and foreign borrowing. And this House, Mr. Speaker, approved in August 2 this year the Finance Bill 2018 with various measures which could affect. Speaker, my deputy is out of order. He's speaking on the phone when his leader and the House is listening. So my deputy, Mr. Speaker, she is out of order, but he has complied. But because, Mr. Speaker, not because of age, he is consulting the elders on the position he's going to take. So, Mr. Speaker, this House also, in August, we have approved the Finance Bill 2018 with various measures which could affect the estimated revenue collection. Speaker, the Constitution provides that the National Treasury should seek approval of expenditure from Parliament within 2 months after the withdrawal of money from the Consolidated Fund, primarily for the purpose of the supplementary appropriation. However, Mr. Speaker, the amount spent should not be more than 10% of the total sum appropriated by Parliament, unless a special circumstance where Parliament has approved a higher percentage. Indeed, Mr. Speaker, and as Chair of Budget Committee will agree with me that this supplementary budget is seeking to change approximately 1.5% of the approved budget that went through this House. So what is this? What is in this supplementary estimate, Mr. Speaker? Speaker, for the financial year 2018-2019 budget, the deficit is 55.10 billion. And this amount that we are going to do a reduction on decreases 11.72 billion for the recurrent expenditure. And that is why the bulk of the Parliamentary Service Commission. Speaker, I want us to engage each other this afternoon and this morning from a point of facts and figures. I am a member of Parliament for a start, Mr. Speaker, apart from being. So CDF is key to me. Mileage is key to me. House allowance is key to me. So Speaker, those items have not been touched. And anybody who has contrary view, let him provide that evidence. But the Budget Office in Bunge, in collaboration with our Budget and Appropriation Committee, set until 2 a.m. last night, Mr. Speaker. So recurrent means domestic travel, that is our travel here going to Mombasa, a bit of foreign travel, and of course, Mr. Speaker, the element of the tendering process in order to complete this building. And Mr. Speaker, let us be very honest. We are this House. We can still call for, and I'm sure by next year, January, February, the minister will bring a supplementary estimates again. And we have the powers based on the revenue that will be projected to say, Mr. Minister, now that the revenue has gone up, the law says 2.5% of that revenue must be allocated for CDF. Mr. Speaker, we as leaders must show the goodwill. Parliament cannot be part and parcel of the country moving forward. If the Kenyan people will be to pay part of the 16% and government will have a reduction, then Parliament, in our own way, must also show the goodwill. We are part and parcel of the leadership. Mr. Speaker, for the affirmative action of our serious women leaders, you remember the only thing you have lost was the 300 million that we included in the last budget when we found an extra. And I was the one who moved that amendment. The other amount for last financial year is what you are going to get. So that 300, if and when is available and the revenue increases, You are here, we will increase, but you know there are people who are peddling, Mr. Speaker, including the media, who are saying 2 billion. In fact, the National Treasury, by reducing the affirmative action by 2 billion, it's like they were closing it. They were closing it. And I want to tell Honorable Rotich that they don't go that route. You know, at least CDF, it was 6 billion, and now we have reduced it. But for the women, they removed 2 billion. And we want to thank the members of the Budget and Appropriation Committee for returning the 2.1 billion for our sisters in the counties. Mr. Speaker, to ensure that there is, and this, Mr. Speaker, it is in law that this House has an obligation to balance the budget. It is in the PFM Act, Section 55, subsection 4. Mr. Speaker, so that we cannot allow the President to sign Appropriation Bill 2018-2019 or the Finance Bill if the budget is not balancing. He will be committing an illegality, and that's why the President returned the Finance Bill. So, Mr. Speaker, all of us together, we represent the people out there. And Mr. Speaker, I want to ask our leaders, when we represent the people, let us lead the people. Let us not lead the people from the middle when you are inside the crowd. You need to be ahead of the leader, of the people. And Mr. Speaker, today, from my experience as a member of Parliament, today they might tell you do this, but 2 months down the line, they will tell you where is the road, where is CDF, where is electricity. They will ask you. So we should not give, you know, a Piriton or Panadol for something that we should cure with amoxicillin or augmentin. It's an antibiotic, it is a virus. And so, Mr. Speaker, let us not give, you know, short-term treatment. Let us treat what we are facing as a country. And as a country, Mr. Speaker, let us even look at the debt. I agree. Let us look at our debt level. The Finance Committee, the Budget Committee will agree. Finally, Mr. Speaker, as I support, Mr. Speaker, finally, you know, there are people who are blaming the handshake. The principal cardinal item in the handshake was that as the political leaders, we agree on the interests of the country. That's right. So when Honorable Raila speaks, and Honorable Kalonzo speaks, and Honorable Mudavadi was the first person to support the 8%. Yeah. So if you are a member of the ANC, unless you don't have a hierarchy, Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, yes, so all our leaders, all of us together, we know what our people are getting. What we have agreed as a House, please, for our national interest, not only now, even in the future. Tomorrow, if there will be an insecurity in Turkana, let us all come together, let us solve national issues, and we move together. I beg to support the budget.
Can the member who is picking water this early in the morning also sit?
Sorry, Mr. Speaker, I second.
Honourable members, I propose the question, which is that this House adopts a report of the Budget and Appropriations Committee on the supplementary estimates for the financial year 2018-2019, laid on the table of the House today, Thursday, September 20th, 2018, and pursuant to the provisions of Article 223 of the Constitution, and standing under number 243, approves 1, a reduction of the total recurrent expenditure for financial year 2018-2019 by Kenya shillings 9,063,228,418 in respect to the votes as contained in the attached schedule. 2, a reduction of the total capital expenditure for financial year 2018-2019 by Kenya shillings 28,540,434,000 in respect to the votes as contained in the attached schedule. 3, an overall reduction in the total budget for financial year 2018-2019 by Kenya shillings 37,603,662,418 in respect to the votes as contained in the schedule. 4, an increase of Kenya shillings 1.5 billion to the Judiciary budget, and 5, that the attached schedule forms the basis of the enactment of the Supplementary Appropriations Act 2018-2019. Leader of the Minority Party.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to remind my colleagues that we have been attacked left, right, and center by the political analysts and economic experts that we don't engage our mind so seriously on budgetary issues. And I would request that we take this advantage of this time that we debate this supplementary budget soberly so that we can take responsibility after we will have passed the supplementary budget estimates. Having said that, Mr. Speaker, I stand here to support the report of the Budget and Appropriations Committee on the supplementary budget estimates 1 of 2018-2019. Mr. Speaker, first I want to start with admission that I think we need to recognize that as a country we are facing tough financial economic times. We have reached a point where we have to really think how to maintain our financial integrity as a country. Mr. Speaker, if we are projecting as a country to collect 1.9 trillion, and that is just a projection, it may be realized, it may not be realized. Experience has proved that previously we have never realized the projected revenue. And therefore, chances are that we may not collect 1.9 trillion. But assuming we do, Mr. Speaker, the debt repayment alone will consume about 870 billion shillings. I know there will be what we call amortization of external debts and domestic debt rollover, but still, in balancing terms, you can safely say that as a country we are going to pay back or repay debts at 870 billion. The salaries are estimated in this country to consume about 640, 650 billion shillings. If you add that to the debt repayment, you are already hitting close to 1.5 trillion shillings. Then if you transfer 314 billion shillings to our 47 counties, then you are in a sense saying you are spending 1.8 trillion plus on both debt repayment, paying salaries, and also transfers to the counties. If the projection was 1.9 trillion, Mr. Speaker, simple arithmetic would put it that as a country we have less than 100 million to spend on other development matters. But Mr. Speaker, if you then transfer CDF at the rate of about 35 billion, then you'd see we are already consuming entire revenue collection, or rather ordinary revenue that we collect as a country. Then that therefore means that we have no money for development. Having said that, Mr. Speaker, what Treasury is admitting late in the day is that we have some obligations with other development partners. We have obligations even by people who loaned us money through Eurobonds, those who we get money from in terms of syndicated loans, and these obligations would put at risk our integrity or financial integrity as a country. If it does that, then two things are likely to happen. One, you may lose out in getting any money from the development partners or get any loan out there. Two, even if you are to get it, you can get it at a high cost. Hence, again, pressure on us as a country. If you are running a company, Mr. Speaker, with such predicaments, you would have the options of either injecting more capital to it, if you have, to help it move, or you sell it all together. I don't know how many of us are ready to sell Kenya all together and realize proceeds, and we divide probably the dividend, and we look for somewhere else to live. Mr. Speaker, having said that, then it therefore means that as a country now, we must cut on our budget. We must cut the cloth to fit our sizes as a country. Hence, the need to take some austerity measures. And as a party, we pronounced ourselves that we are going to ask the country to take real austerity measures. Now, Mr. Speaker, quickly, I want to just mention some of the reductions. Mr. Speaker, one is that what the Treasury had recommended, there are amendments that we have made in the Committee of Parliament, National Assembly. Number one is the CDF. I want to put it very clear. It is not that we have not touched CDF, but we are putting CDF to the statutory provision of 2.5% of 1.33 trillion, which brings it to 33.3 or thereabout billion. Mr. Speaker, on the Women Affirmative Action Fund for the women reps, Mr. Speaker, this was disaster. I don't know where the Treasury got this idea of doing away with that fund altogether. But what we have done, actually I want to correct, I think the provision last year was 2.3 billion. 2 billion that year. We added it to 2.3 billion this time. We are now putting at 2.1. So my calculation is that it has been reduced by 200 million, which means we have added on top of what was given last year by 100 million. So, Mr. Speaker, on the parliamentary budget, what we did, and this also needs to go out clearly, because I know this is likely to be picked. What we did was Treasury was, as opposed to other government ministries, Treasury wanted to reduce parliamentary budget by close to 30–40% for reasons we don't know. What we have done is, like all government departments, except Judiciary, we have reduced O&M by 16% across the board. Parliament, executive, but Parliament we were very careful. Just like executive, they are not touching emoluments, because you can't touch salaries. We are also saying, Parliament, don't touch emoluments. So that is what we have done. There is nothing that we have done which is different from what is done for the executive. So I don't think there is anything to be ashamed of here. What we have done is just to rationalize, cut across the board O&M for both the executive and the legislature, but on personal emoluments, cushion it for all the departments. Mr. Speaker, I would have said more. If you allow me 1 minute, I will say two things. We have also reduced 600 million from the Ministry of Education on infrastructure, because this money is not being distributed fairly. But we have left it at 1.5 to think about it in future. Finally, on the roads, and I want to also ask members, because that is very important. On the roads, remember, we decided to put direct budgetary allocation of 8.7 billion. But there is the usual road maintenance levy. The information that is there is that the roads maintenance levy is going to move upwards to 11 billion, which if you calculate would translate to about 35 million per constituency. And therefore, because of the times that we are in, we decided to leave that direct allocation to the roads to the road sector. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I support this supplementary provision.
Who is writing on a point of order? Who is raising a point of order? Vincent Kemose. What's your point of order?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity. Mr. Speaker, if you look at...
Point of order. Eh?
Yes, I'm raising the point of order, Mr.
Yes.
Speaker.
Yes.
From the report, the committee recommendations, they have spoken about the schedules. That is Roman 1, Roman 2, and Roman 5. Mr. Speaker, I'm begging you to direct that we be given those schedules so that we look at them and we be informed before we proceed with further debate, Mr. Speaker.
Are you not looking at the particular order paper that is attaching the... It is there. Okay, the clerk's office, Sergeant at Arms, please supply all the members. I know they are still being printed. Remember, I did explain that we even extended the time by an extra 10 minutes to allow the Secretariat to print as many copies of the order paper as possible. Chair, Committee on Administration.
Yeah, thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I rise to support the card. And Honorable Speaker, I commend the Committee of Budget for the work they have done, because where we are as a nation, the economy is not so good right now. And what the committee has done, I believe, Honorable Speaker, it will help us to move on as a nation. And Honorable Speaker, my Committee of Administration National Security do support the card, and in vote 1011, that is the presidency, and vote 1021, State Department for Interior, and vote 1023, the State Department for Correctional Services, vote 1024, State Department for Immigration and Citizen Services. Honorable Speaker, as a committee, of course, we have some issues which were concerned because of the police, especially the Department of Crime. Because, Honorable Speaker, it is my prayer that when economy changes, we'll be able to do something for the crime department. They have started a very good journey to start, especially to deal with the economic crimes in the country, and also to help infrastructuring the collection of revenue. So, Honorable Speaker, as we move, it is my prayer that the budgets available will be able to support the Department of Crime to do the very noble job they are doing right now, to change even what is needed for people who really need to pay their taxes, and the people who are committing a lot of crime in the economy, which is also affects what we are through today. Honorable Speaker, I do support the changes which are mentioned by the committee by the budget. Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker.
Member for Mwingi Central. Mwingi Central.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to contribute on the motion on appropriation bill.
No, this is not appropriation bill.
Supplementary.
It's supplementary.
Yes, supplementary bill. Mr. Speaker, where I'm coming from, Mwingi Central constituency, I was sent by my constituents to come and say that they do not want an increment on their living standards. And Mr. Speaker, increasing taxation on petroleum products.
Relevance. This is supplementary. You see, honor members. That is why I told you to listen to the motion as it was being moved and seconded. Now, so that you know, you know what it is you are talking.
Mr. Speaker, I stand guided.
Yes, please.
I stand guided.
It's the estimates.
Mr. Speaker.
Yes.
Mr. Speaker, CNDF touches on the constituency level, the common mwananchi. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, I do not support the reduction of CDF. Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I do not support the reduction of Affirmative Action Fund. Mr. Speaker, I do not support reduction of parliamentary budget, because that is where I belong. Mr. Speaker, we would rather reduce spending on government departments and not the parliament. Mr. Speaker, we have seen a lot of mismanagement of government resources. We have seen, for example, in the last formation of government, there was creation of CASs. The CASs increased spending in government. Mr. Speaker, we also saw recently the President announcing that police will be given new uniforms. We have not seen that reduction, because instead of giving a police new uniforms, they should stay with their old uniforms and put that money in the development budget. Mr. Speaker, I rise to oppose the recommendations by the Budget Committee.
Well, honor members, you know, every member is at liberty to express themselves. So, according to the member for Mwingi Central, you'd rather the police be in patrolling here nude. So, anyhow, Honorable Kimunya, because whether they are new or old, even new ones also get, even the old ones get worn out. So, Honorable Kimunya, but the member is within his right. What is his point of order? What is the point of order, Honorable Lomenen? What's your point of order?
Mr. Speaker, thank you for giving me this opportunity. I want you to guide us, Mr. Speaker. The members who have signed this report are 13. They did not meet the threshold. They are not even 50%. They are not even. So, Mr. Speaker, even before we debate this report, is it properly in order? Is it supposed to be in this house? Mr. Speaker, guide us on that, because I'm seeing 13 signatures here.
Honorable Ishongwa. Honorable Ishongwa.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, it's good to appreciate that the Honorable Lomenen is a second-term MP, and I'm sure he knows that the quorum for the Budget and Appropriations Committee is 9 members for the committee to be able to transact business. Number 2, Honorable Speaker. Secondly, Honorable Speaker.
Honor members, you know, you just look at your standing orders, so that even as you shout no or yes, you know, so that the people you represent can see you shout no when there is something, or you just shout no because it is fashionable to shout no. Yes, I mean, the chair is explaining.
Honorable Speaker, I was saying, secondly, it's important to appreciate that the members of the Budget and Appropriations Committee did dedicate a lot of their time yesterday, and we truly appreciate that. We were finishing this report some minutes to midnight last night. We had not had dinner, and therefore a few of our members had actually stepped out before signing for adoption. However, Honorable Speaker, the same members of the Budget and Appropriations Committee are in this house. If there is any member of the Budget and Appropriations Committee, or indeed any member of this house who has a different opinion other than what is on the report, is at liberty to say it. The members of the Budget and Appropriations Committee, if there is any who would not have agreed with the contents of the report, is also at liberty to file a dissenting report that is not there. Therefore, Honorable Speaker, I beg to advise Honorable Lemenin.
Honorable members, so that we, this is a serious business. It's estimates. So I would really plead with you, those of you who have not familiarized themselves, even in your second term, with the standing orders. Read the standing order number 199, subsection 2. And for the information of the member for Turkana South, I have the list of the members of the Budget and Appropriations Committee who were present at their meeting yesterday. Forget. Honorable Omenen, any further altercation on this, out. Because standing on, honorable members, listen. I'll read this for, honorable members, this is the National Assembly. These are the clear provisions, honorable members, these are the clear provisions of the Standing Order 199. It reads, the report, honorable members, this is certainly not a county assembly. The report of a select committee, having been adopted by a majority of the members, shall be signed by the chairperson on behalf of the committee. That is that's Standing Order 199, subsection 2. So, honorable members, the signing, I have the list of all the members. The signing, and please don't expect me to begin doing secretarial work from the chair. Surely, honorable members, if you have a reason or other that you don't want to debate this motion, please raise substantive issues. Not a matter really as simple as this. So the report is properly before the House. The Honorable Kemunya.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to support this report of the committee and to congratulate the committee for working overtime to get this matter sorted out in the limited time that they had. And Mr. Speaker, because I don't have much time, I just want to lay down some basic principles that can help members appreciate where we are. And the first thing is obviously that a budget is only a projection. Until you get the money, it's purely paper. And what we actually had, we had an over-exaggerated budget that could not match the revenues that were required to finance it. So having realized that, the natural thing is you then have to go back and work on your expenditure, because that is what you have control over. We actually don't have control over the revenues. Anything could happen. The fundamentals could change. The environment could change. The global economies could change. And hence, if we are not conservative on our revenues and continue thinking that we can project to spend a lot, we end up putting ourselves in debt. So the first thing we need to appreciate is that whatever projections have been given to us could even change even next month, could even change the month after that, if more revenue is realized, because there will be more money available to finance extra expenditure. If revenue is not realized, the expenditures could also be rationalized further down, and we must accept that. I know there is talk that perhaps we are conserving what is dear to us, but I want to look at it from a different angle. Indeed, CDF has been maintained. The law requires that CDF is at least 2.5%. So there's nothing about parliamentary that Parliament has conserved money for itself and not cut elsewhere. That's what the law says. It's minimum 2.5%. The law also says you cannot deduct people's salaries once you've already committed. There are contractual obligations that have to be met. So again, we are not doing anything here because of our salaries or because of any other salaries. It's the legal commitment that have been entered. The other item I just wanted to mention is obviously that you cannot, even as you think of, like putting speed governors on vehicles to cut down on speed, you cannot then put even including on ambulances, because at times they will need to exceed that speed limit to be able to do the work it's designed. So the austerity measures cannot be put in a way that impedes even the work of this parliament, or indeed, and I'm happy that even the judiciary has actually been given more money so that between the institutions they're able to complement one another. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to urge this House, what we basically have before us of our best projections at this moment. Those things could change. And if it changes for the better, the money will be increased, CDF will be enhanced, more monies will be going to schools, more money could go, and it's this same committee that we have given this responsibility that will come here. If, on the other hand, we stick to what we already have, and we go and tell people we are budgeting on 117 per constituency, and revenue is not realized, and you have given contracts to people to do schools, you are going to end up with no exchequer releases, and pending bills will be accumulating. So I would rather be very conservative in terms of where we start our planning, and should the money increase, obviously then we'll come back here and ask. Mr. Speaker, I basically don't want to go through that, but I do hope that we don't spend a lot of time on this one, so that we can now dig deeper in terms of the financing of this, because again the two are intertwined. And if we don't end up with more finances, we will need to come back here and rationalize further. But Mr. Speaker, with those words, I beg to support and urge the rest of the members, let's support the committee, let's pass this report and be able to move to the next step in the Committee of Supply. I beg to support. With those, I support.
Member for Emuhaya.
Yeah, Honorable Speaker, I stand on the onset to oppose these amendments, because we should see exactly where we are beginning from to come to the amendments that are before the House. The amendments before the House are because we are looking for funds from within the budget to take care of certain pilferages that have been occurring within government itself. And therefore, Honorable Speaker, there are many other areas which should have been touched. For instance, when I was going through this particular document, I did not see a heavy hand being put on the NYS, which has been known to actually spend our money wrongly. But instead I saw the budget for education infrastructure being affected. And the only simple reason is that that money is not being given out in equity way. That is something that can be dealt with within management. And therefore, it would be unreasonable to hit the budgets that affects Kenyans. Kenyans outside there, for instance, when it comes to education, they solely depend on government and CDF for building of infrastructure in the schools. So when you attack it, then it means that you are not within the listening of the Kenyans. Honorable Speaker, I also saw the budget of the Teacher Service Commission affected. This country is lacking insofar as teachers' employment is concerned. And therefore, why would we go a step further to hit on areas that are required? And therefore, Mr. Speaker, I think that the proposals before us are not good for Kenyans. And moving forward, I would also want to tell the House that I'm not happy when the leadership within the House directs the motion on these budget allocations and proposals to mean that if the House and the members' interests have been taken care of, then we can leave the rest of the Kenyans to suffer with the taxes. That impression was very, very wrong, because outside there it will look like immediately we got what we thought was correct in terms of the CDF, in terms of other emoluments, then we left the ordinary mwananchi to suffer. So, Honorable Speaker, without much ado, I want to ask that moving forward, I can also see the mood in the House is set to make a determination of this, so that the members can move forward and look at the second motion, which is to look at the memorandum that was brought by the President into the House. And therefore, I beg to oppose in totality these proposals.
The Chair, Justice and Legal Affairs Committee. Honourable members, let us debate the motion before us. The supplementary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to support this motion. And Mr. Speaker, as I support this motion, I also want to thank the members of the Budget Committee for having a short time. And Mr. Speaker, we're able to table the report today for us to deal with this very important issue. Mr. Speaker, there's a lot of wide consultation, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable members, I can only hear what the chair of Justice and Legal Affairs Committee is saying. I know it is important to consult, but please, just lower the decibels.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to support this motion, and I want to refer members to the increment, Mr. Speaker, of 1.5 billion to the Judiciary, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, our Constitution requires that we have a high court in every county. Mr. Speaker, we have over 72 law courts across the country, Mr. Speaker, in various levels of development. In my county, Mr. Speaker, for example, in Cabernet, I have a high court which is already built, but with a record of 40%. And many other courts in our country where we need funding to complete, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, access to justice by the Kenyan people, Mr. Speaker, is critical. As we deal with the economy, Mr. Speaker, as we deal with the Big Four agenda, Mr. Speaker, the access to justice is an enabling item. We can never be able, Mr. Speaker, to develop the country if the citizens, businessmen, are unable to access justice, Mr. Speaker, to resolve issues of dispute in business and so on. And so, Mr. Speaker, allocating 1.5 billion to Judiciary, Mr. Speaker, to complete the construction of our courts, Mr. Speaker, is a move in the right direction. Mr. Speaker, this 1.5 billion is actually a donor funding from the World Bank. And Mr. Speaker, we want to encourage the Judiciary. And Mr. Speaker, we have had sessions with the Judiciary, with the Chief Justice, with the Registrar of the High Court. And Mr. Speaker, we have agreed with them that within the next few months, Mr. Speaker, they should be able, Mr. Speaker, to conclude the construction of these courts, so that then we move to the other counties, Mr. Speaker, where we already don't have High Court. Of course, Mr. Speaker, I also note from the report that we have, as a sector, taken away some substantial amount of money from the Office of the Attorney General, from the Office of the Registrar of Political Parties, Witness Protection Agency, Kenya National Commission on Human Rights, and Mr. Speaker, Commission on Administrative Justice. Mr. Speaker, my plea is that in our next supplementary, Mr. Speaker, these are critical agencies, Mr. Speaker, which are also important in ensuring that Kenyans access justice. And Mr. Speaker, I will be requesting, as we move perhaps to the next supplementary, that Mr. Speaker, funding should be given to those institutions because they are very important, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I would like to call upon my colleagues, as you go to your counties, as you go to your constituencies, Mr. Speaker, I want to request them to visit these courts which are being constructed, so that, Mr. Speaker, you see that these are going to help your constituents in your various counties and constituencies, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to conclude by saying that the supplementary budget, Mr. Speaker, is in response to our challenges as a country. And Mr. Speaker, this does not necessarily mean that what has been reduced cannot be availed in our future budgets, Mr. Speaker, as we proceed. And so I want to call upon my colleagues that let us pass this motion, this supplementary budget, Mr. Speaker, so that we move forward as a country and ensure that our people, Mr. Speaker, access justice in our respective counties and constituencies. Mr. Speaker, I want to thank you.
Honourable members, nominated member Osoti.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity to contribute to this motion. Mr. Speaker, I must start by commending the Budget Committee for the good work they have done within the shortest time possible. But Mr. Speaker, I think they would have done better, because looking at the figures and comparing with their past reports, Mr. Speaker, there are some votes which I think the Budget Committee would have looked at and probably harmonize the budget to reduce the budget gap. And I want to give an example, Mr. Speaker, of TVET, which is vote number 1064. Mr. Speaker, it is not very clear in the estimate what the details around TVET, because in the initial estimate, the figure that was given was 7.4 billion shillings. Initial figure that was given was 2.3 billion shillings. But in the estimate, we are talking about 7.4 billion shillings. Mr. Speaker, this is a huge variation which they would have looked at it to consider saving more money there. Mr. Speaker, I also noticed that there is a reduction on the budget for the ICT, about 5.9 billion shillings. Mr. Speaker, I'm concerned because we cannot talk about the big four without ICT as a driver. We cannot talk about innovation in this country if we are reducing the budget for ICT. And I think this budget was meant for the Konza City, which those of us who are in the ICT committee, we were very glad that now the government had taken a positive step to ensure that this country innovates. But that has further been reduced, and that, Mr. Speaker, will mean that we will not take the project on Konza City. Mr. Speaker, I'm also looking at vote number 1081, which is Health Policy Standards and Regulation. This has been allocated over 11 billion. But if you look at last financial year, it had 1.7 billion. I think we need to be very clear on what constitutes the health policy standards and regulation. And Mr. Speaker, I think in the next budget cycle, the budget estimates must give us finer details so that we can interrogate further. Giving huge figures to votes which are not very clear, not itemized, it is very confusing and is actually retarding the performance of Parliament in terms of offering budget oversight. Mr. Speaker, I have also concerned on vote on 1185, the National Social Safety Net. Whereas, Mr. Speaker, I agree that this program is important because it helps our elders and other disadvantaged groups. There has been a huge increase from last year. Last year the figure was 5.8 billion. But now we are asking for more than that. I think we need a clear explanation about this. Considering that when we go to the villages, elders tell us that they don't get this money or this money comes late. So some of those votes are votes that can be used to fill the budget gap. There is also a vote on 1023, correctional services, which I think is to do with prisoners. The figure...
Chair, Education Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to support this motion, and I want to thank the Budget and Appropriation Committee. First of all, Mr. Speaker, the committee came up to rationalize the budget and make sure that non-essentials, especially in government sectors like teas and even entertainment allowances, most of it were reduced. Mr. Speaker, I want to look at vote 1064. Mr. Speaker, it is indicated that there was a reduction of 1.3 billion, especially on the recruitment of teachers, on trainers. This one, I want to say that the government did well, especially in building technical training institutes. And it has gone ahead to recruit over 2,000 teachers for technical training institutes. I will only urge the Budget and Appropriation Committee in the second supplementary budget to reinstate this amount so that enough teachers will be recruited in technical training institutes. Mr. Speaker, on the laptop program, I want to note that this is one of the pet projects of the Jubilee government, and it has been implemented very well for the last 2-3 years. This program needs also, I know there is a reduction of almost 5 billion, but this reduction also needs to be reinstated in a second SAP so that it succeeds very well. Mr. Speaker, I want to know that in infrastructure for schools, this year, unlike last year it was 1.5 billion. This year it is 1.6 billion, meaning that they have an additional almost 100 billion. And I think this one will go a long way in ensuring that the 100% transition in schools is attained. In fact, Mr. Speaker, the building and construction of schools across the country has been going on very well. That budget for 2.1 billion that had been indicated earlier on had actually served well. On Teacher Service Commission, I think there is a very small reduction, which is actually it's on rationalization, 67 million. So, Mr. Speaker, I rise to support this rationalization program, and I support the motion. Thank you.
Member for Suna East.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I stand to support this motion the appropriation motion, Mr. Speaker, supplementary, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to remind members, or I want to put to the attention of members, Mr. Speaker, where we are coming from as a parliament, Mr. Speaker. Before the new constitution came into place, Mr. Speaker, we are coming as traditionally as a parliament, Mr. Speaker, where parliament had no role completely in budget making, Mr. Speaker, where they were allowed only to change 1%, Mr. Speaker, of the total estimate, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Kimunya, Honorable Kimunya is here, Mr. Speaker, to testify to, that he used to come to the house here, read the budget and the estimates. It used to be a big day for him with some flowers here on his side here, on his court, Mr. Speaker, that this is the day. And Mr. Speaker, the parliament, after that, is just to discuss the budget, Mr. Speaker, and every minister appears here to seek his vote, Mr. Speaker, and it ends there. But now, Mr. Speaker, through the new constitution, we have been given an opportunity to discuss, if possible, change, amend, and do anything that we need to do for the benefit of the country, Mr. Speaker. But Mr. Speaker, that goes with responsibility, that you must be sure of how you want to execute that responsibility, Mr. Speaker, for the good of the country, Mr. Speaker. It is very clear, Mr. Speaker, that austerity measures are needed at this point in time in our country, Mr. Speaker. And we have said that as a party, as a house, and as leaders, Mr. Speaker. And first, and secondly, Mr. Speaker, I want to congratulate the Committee of Budget and Appropriation, Mr. Speaker, for the good work they have done, Mr. Speaker, with a short time period that they were given to look into this supplementary estimate, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, yesterday when I was alone, I was thinking wide and aloud, Mr. Speaker, how this committee will attend to this matter, Mr. Speaker, with this short period of time that they had, which was hours, Mr. Speaker, not even a whole day. And Mr. Speaker, they have come out as brave men and women that we've put, and I want to congratulate members of NASA who are in that committee, Mr. Speaker, that they have done a good job, that they have come up with a supplementary budget that can resonate well with the House, Mr. Speaker, as we sit today, Mr. Speaker. Look at, Mr. Speaker, the issue of CDF. That is very important matter to members of Parliament, Mr. Speaker. And there was a reduction of 5 billion shillings from that fund, Mr. Speaker. But in their own wisdom, 6 billion. They said they're neither going to increase or decrease, but what they are going to do, they are going to adhere to the 2.5% statutory requirement of the law, that CDF must be 2.5% of the revenue, Mr. Speaker. And that came to 33 billion, Mr. Speaker. They just applied the law as required, Mr. Speaker. The committee did that. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, go ahead. Mr. Speaker, the other issue is about the women rep funds, Mr. Speaker. 2 billion shillings were removed, Mr. Speaker. But the budget committee, through the chairman, Honorable Ishungwa, in their own wisdom, Mr. Speaker, brought back that fund to take care about the affirmative action programs, Mr. Speaker, that are in place in this country. Mr. Speaker, I beseech members this morning, Mr. Speaker, to support this supplementary budget, whichever side of the House you belong to. Because, Mr. Speaker, there was no any other way than the way this committee has done to this, the justice they have done to this supplementary budget, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, when we were given an opportunity as a House to look into this budget of this country, Mr. Speaker, look, there is 1.5 billion shillings, Mr. Speaker, that has been taken back to the Judiciary. The other day, the Chief Justice was complaining in a public forum, in a press conference, that he has no money to fund courts, new buildings have stalled, Mr. Speaker. Now, under this supplementary estimate, Mr. Speaker, there is 1.5 billion shillings for the Judiciary, Mr. Speaker. There is more money to the DPP so that corruption can be fought, and there is more money that comes back to the Exchequer, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as a member of this House, Mr. Speaker, I want to plead with the members that let us pass this motion, and in the afternoon we pass the appropriation bill, Mr. Speaker, so that we are seen to be people who take care of the interests of both the people of the Kenya, of the Republic, and the government or the executive that we have been given responsibility to legislate on their behalf. Mr. Speaker, it is very popular to say no. We have been in the no camp for many years. Some of us, we went to jail for saying no. But reality, you cannot close your eyes on reality, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Sholei,
Honorable Speaker, thank you for the opportunity. I rise to support this motion by the Budget and Appropriations Committee, and I'd like to commend the committee for the good work they have done. I wish to say that the budget had been passed by this very House with a deficit. Therefore, this supplementary budget that has been presented before this House is not austerity measures, but rationalization of our budget to fit together with the revenue that this country has. If this country does not plug its deficit, then we will have problems with our development partners such as IMF. Remember that we have a fiscal deficit agreement with them, and therefore if there is a deficit, then what will happen is that we shall lose the support of donor funding, because any unfinanced items will cause public debt to rise, and if public debt rises, then the shilling shall fall and all of us in this country shall be in trouble. And for that reason I wish to support. And as I want to say that, Mr. Speaker, I did hear from Honorable Mbadi and others that they had been, and also from the chair of the budget committee, that there had been an attempt by the National Treasury to do away with the National Government Affirmative Action Fund. And I want to say this in no uncertain terms to Henry Rotich: don't you dare touch the National Government Affirmative Action Fund. If you do, you will be sending a message that this country does not care, or that this government does not care for people living with disabilities, for orphans, for the vulnerable women and youth in our society. And I want to also tell Henry Rotich in no uncertain terms that, remember, women are 52% of this country. We pay taxes and we vote. And if anyone wants to have a political future in this country, I think the women are getting empowered. We shall mobilize ourselves and say, you don't need our 52% vote if you won't even support us with such meager resources. Remember, what has happened here is that the CDF has not been reduced. In fact, it has been increased. At 101, it was at the required 2.5%. It has been increased to 110. And I do not begrudge our members of parliament that you can have the CDF because what you do is important. But what I'm asking is, please do not touch the National Affirmative Action Fund. And I hope this message, and all the women, I'm asking that you support me to ensure that Henry Rotich does not attempt to ever do that again. It is unacceptable, and he has no right to do that, because all of us are also members of this country. And with that, I beg to support this motion. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Member for Kadhiani.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity. Mr. Speaker, today I stand here as a proud member of the opposition of this country in the National Assembly. And I want to say that basically, Mr. Speaker, I speak with a heavy heart, but a very clear conscience. This country, we have citizens, and the citizens have spoken. Citizens have been speaking for the last 2-3 weeks, and their position is very clear. Mr. Speaker, we are between a rock and a hard place. But how did we get there? This House passed an appropriations bill. In that appropriations bill, we spend money. Later on, when the finance bill came to this House, we made very deliberate attempts to, of course, protect the Kenyan citizens, and came up with a finance bill that did not give enough money on the appropriations that we had already passed in the House. But Mr. Speaker, today, we have an opportunity to correct this situation. And my proposal is this: Kenya has an extremely ambitious budget. An extremely ambitious budget. And this budget, Mr. Speaker, is of course, it is big because we have issues to do with debt repayments. We have issues to do with duplication. You all know that our National Assembly here and the Senate almost do the same jobs. The Senate and the county assemblies do the same job. DPP, DCI, ESCC, they kind of duplicate each other. So, Mr. Speaker, it is important to look at some of these issues with a view of ensuring that we provide direction to the country. Mr. Speaker, the government has a lot of wastage trips, huge convoys on leadership. We had recently the president himself talking about provision of extra police uniforms. So, Mr. Speaker, I think all of us are aware also about the corruption that is going on in our ministries, NYS and others, Ministry of Health. So, Mr. Speaker, I think now we need to figure out solutions. And I want to propose the following. First and foremost, I support the reduction of the budget. But, Mr. Speaker, I wish that the Budget and Appropriations Committee had reduced the budget to a level where we do not require to further tax Kenyans so that we can meet that budget. So even as I support this one, I wish it was more than what we are reducing. I wish we reduced further so that we don't seem like we want to save money for Parliament, we want to save money for NYS, because that is what many people have said. I wish the budget was reduced across the board so that in the afternoon we do not discuss issues of increasing whatever taxation on our people. So, Mr. Speaker, I wish there was time for us to have proposed amendments and discuss them. I think we are between a rock and a hard place. But as a member of the opposition, Mr. Speaker, on this particular one, I oppose.
Member for Kiharu.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this chance. And Mr. Speaker, as a new member of Parliament, I especially feel very misrepresented by the utterances that were made by the majority leader. Because, Mr. Speaker, as we debate this matter, we are just rotating around very minute issues insofar as percentage is concerned. Mr. Speaker, the leader of majority talked about PSC budget, talked about mileage, talked about house allowance, and Mr. Speaker, as a member of Parliament, I never vied to be member for Kiharu to come here so that I get mileage. Mr. Speaker, I never vied to be member for Kiharu to come here so that I get emolument, so that I get exceeded allowances, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, we have to stop misleading the Kenyan people by just rotating and parading this matter like it's just a matter about us members of Parliament. Mr. Speaker, the issue before us is about Kenyans, not about us. And Mr. Speaker, the issues we should be discussing, and those are the issues I will discuss, is not just about CDF, because CDF definitely, as far as Kenyans are concerned, is attached to us. But Mr. Speaker, the real issues is about roads. The real issues is about REA, Rural Electrification Authority. The real issues, Mr. Speaker, is about last mile connectivity project. Mr. Speaker, I would wish and request my colleagues, let us not send the wrong signal out there. The issue is not about us. The issue is not about GAF, because all those issues cumulatively, Mr. Speaker, is less than 5% of the issues before us today. But Mr. Speaker, even on such, as an economist, I have gone through what the committee brought here today. And Mr. Speaker, because I know so many Kenyans are watching, the no's and the yeses in this session is not a no or a yes about 16% VAT. And therefore, whether we say no, whether we say yes, it is not about the popular matter that Kenyans are waiting for out there. It is just a matter of rearranging government money from this department to the other. And on that rearrangement, Mr. Speaker, it is very good that you tell the Kenyan people, we are not actually increasing CDF. We are reducing CDF from where we wanted it to be, Mr. Speaker. But, Mr. Speaker, it is good that we communicate very clearly that we had heavy rains in this country and all our roads, especially the feeder roads, were destroyed by the heavy rains. Mr. Speaker, the issue is, if we support this, it is about the matter of postponing making those roads. But Mr. Speaker, as an economist, on this report, I support it. But in the afternoon, it could be different.
Well, I suppose the member is at liberty to use the language he feels comfortable with. Member for Kilifi North.
You don't know that. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. From the onset, Mr. Speaker, I want to say that I oppose this report. And I want to say this. The cuts in estimates that the chairman has talked about, the 16%, I consider them very superfluous, because if you reduce government recurrent by 16%, but if you also continue to hold the items that spend the 16%, then what you're doing is you're still burdening government. If you look at economics, it's very clear that if you have a building that costs you a certain amount of money to put it up, you also need a consequential 25% to run it. Today we have very many cars that guzzle a lot of petrol in this country that are run by government. We still have a lot of facilities in the government, and the president, when he was finance minister, once said that let's dispose of government assets to save money first and also to create austerity measures. But the austerity measures that are being talked about here is just about cutting costs. It's not about saving costs within what we already have. I believe very strongly that if we go ahead to look at these areas, instead of having ministers that are lazy and every time the president asks for anything, you either cut here or you increase tax. That's the only way this government is run. But I believe very strongly that we can look at offloading some of the assets that government has to ensure that we have more money to put in roads and to have more money to put to hire teachers, and we have more money to do other things for this government. Mr. Speaker, the gap, the financing gap that is proposed, that is here, and that these cuts are being seen as if we rob parliament, then we can take care of Kenyans. That is the wrong message that is being sent. What we are saying is that there is better austerity measures that the Budget and Appropriations Committee could do to ensure that we have money enough. But, Mr. Speaker, what we have is just a very easy thing: spend the night, cut costs here, cut CDF, cut parliamentary budget and all that. But I think the economists in this country can save this country from the huge government that we have. This government is one of the biggest in Africa. It has so many things that are put together. Today, before this current government, we didn't have CISs, but every CIS that comes in with a budget of over 5 million a month. If you multiply that by the number of ministries that we have, you have an over increase on expenditure in this country. That's the first thing that economists say: President, cut this fast so that we can save money for the country. Mr. Speaker, I would like to say that there are certain things when you cut. For example, if you remove TVET, the government has a deliberate program to empower Kenyans. Today you are saying cut TVET. Areas like where I come from, we don't have enough teachers. You are saying reduce money for employing teachers. So where is this? What is the vision of the economy of this country? What is the vision of this government in terms of public service and in terms of the economic and fiscal responsibility of this country? Mr. Speaker, I oppose this report. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Honorable Sankok, what is your point of order now?
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. I'm standing on the point of order 95. Reading from the mood of the House, we are repeating the same things. Honorable Speaker, I beg that you put the question. Yes. No, nikusema nini? Yes.
The mover is not even here.
Well, honorable members, well, I appreciate that. You remember you passed a motion earlier on that on general debate of supply, you will have 2 hours, 15 minutes. So you must remember that. And that's why every member was given 5 minutes. So, and that's why I told you, sometimes it's not good to interrupt members. If you have only 5 minutes, please, if you interrupt a member, then they lose their thought processes. You destabilize them. You know, it becomes like those areas in northern South Carolina where there was a Hurricane Florence. So we don't want members to be hit by something like that, Hurricane Florence, and those other typhoons in China. So, honourable members, I get the member for Garsen. Member for Garsen.
Asante sana Speaker kwa kunipatia hii fursa. Mimi nawakilisha watu wa Garsen kwa maoni yao. Kitu wa kwanza, kule Garsen kuna shida ya stima. Vile naona bajeti ya stima yote imeondolewa. Kitu kingine Speaker, mambo ya Equilization Fund. Equilization Fund iko katika katiba ya Kenya na inafaidi watu wa sehemu kame. Na vile inaonekana Equilization Fund imeondolewa, na sisi kama watu wa sehemu kame tunafaidi na Equilization Fund. Kwa hivyo pamoja na mambo ya stima, na pia Mheshimiwa Speaker, mambo ya CDF. Ukienda shule katika constituency zote za Kenya, CDF ndio inajenga shule, CDF ndio inajenga mambo ya chief camps, mambo ya police, na hiyo yote imeondolewa. Mheshimiwa Speaker, yani kupunguzwa inamaanisha imeondolewa. Mheshimiwa Speaker, pia mambo ya mawaziri wako na cheska. Sijui wamechaguliwa na nani ama wako na adui aina gani mawaziri kutembea na cheskas. Kwa hivyo Mheshimiwa Speaker, mimi napinga hii bajeti vile imewasilishwa. Kwa ajili tunataka stima na Equalization Fund katika sehemu zetu kame. Asante Speaker.
Chair of Lands, Honorable Nyamai.
Very well. Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I would like to start by saying that I support this report by the Budget and Appropriations Committee. Honorable Speaker, last evening I had the opportunity to go to Boma after visiting Ijara constituency, and members of this committee were very busy. In fact, nobody was speaking to me because they were focusing on the figures and making sure that they only touched on areas which were not so sensitive. Honorable Speaker, I must start by saying that having figures on a piece of paper which cannot be funded, it is a shame. So for that reason, I would like to congratulate the committee for focusing on areas that touch various departments. They did not focus on one department, and also they touch the house which we belong. Honorable Speaker, I want to focus on the big four, and I would like to give reference to my own constituency and Kitui County, which is a beneficiary of projects that have never been done since independence. And I would like to talk about Kitui Kibwezi Road, Honorable Speaker, which is funded on a budget of 18 billion by the Chinese, a road which is 146 kilometers. Honorable Speaker, I do not know what we can tell the people of Kitui County, the people of Makueni County, and all the other counties that are along that road if such a road was stopped because our country is not able to pay its debts. So, Honorable Speaker, I would like to say that the out here and the deductions that we are doing for matters which are not really luxurious, but they are not as important as the projects that are being implemented. It's a matter that needs to be considered, and we need to give as much support as we can to this committee, which touched on areas that are not extremely sensitive. Honorable Speaker, it is true that money for roads has been reduced, but at the same time, it is important, honorable members, to notice that a lot of money has been devolved to our counties, to our governors, so that they can deal with the roads. And the roads money has not been touched. For that reason, Honorable Speaker, as I support this report, I would like to say that now it is the responsibility of our governors to know that they need to deal with matters roads. Matters to do with the projects that are ongoing in our constituencies at the moment, the TTIs that we are constructing, the KMTCs that we are building, the major roads, the SGR, all these are projects that have put our country in a very good trajectory as far as development is concerned. Honorable Speaker, I would like to say that the projects, the big four is focusing on universal health coverage, Honorable Speaker, on manufacturing. which are extremely important for this country, because a country that is not healthy cannot also implement other projects that are important for the country. Honorable Speaker, our country is also moving. We are now being comparable to other sub-Saharan countries which are developed, like the Southern Africa. That is where we are today. And it is also important that when we are comparing the level of development, we also compare ourselves with countries like South Africa, like Nigeria, because that is where the country is today. Honorable Speaker, I would like to say one more thing before my time is over. That CDF touches, it is not a project for members of parliament. This is a project for wananchi. This is a project which gives a poor child a bursary to make them get somewhere. This is a project which has developed our schools. Myself, I am in charge of 260 primary schools. I believe that Kitui South is the only constituency 260 primary schools and 60 secondary schools. Honorable Speaker, I would like to thank this committee for making sure that the budget for CDF is increased. And also NGAF, Honorable Speaker, I would like to thank this committee for making sure that NGAF is put afloat, because this is a project where women members of parliament are able to go to social areas where CDF does not reach. For those remarks, Honorable Speaker, I would like to thank you so much for giving me this opportunity, and without shame and without fear of contradiction, I support this report. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Member for Homa Bay Town. Member for Homa Bay Town. Member for Homa Bay Town.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, there is a good reason as to why the people of Kenya, under the new constitution, vested the power to budget in parliament. And Mr. Speaker, when this supplementary budget came, my idea was that we had been thrown to something we needed to have. Because this is one function, Mr. Speaker, as parliament we've taken very lightly in the past. Mr. Speaker, I have to start by regretting that the Budget and Appropriations Committee has failed to do a good job with the opportunity we've gotten. Mr. Speaker, we are still splashing too much money to be wasted by government. I would have expected that the entire money, Mr. Speaker, we give annually to the Education Ministry for school infrastructure goes to the CDF. And I'm not supporting CDF because we are there. We are not there. I don't care whether CDF is 0 or 10, but I care that this is the only fund through which the classrooms which never existed in the country have existed. And of course the other funds. I don't care whether I travel as a member of parliament or not, but we needed some measures. Mr. Speaker, we waste a lot of money under irrigation programs in the country. Projects like Galana Kulalu, with returns we cannot account for. Mr. Speaker, the construction of dams in this country, if you look at the billing, over 38 billion, it is too much money. Mr. Speaker, the amounts of money we waste under the presidency, renovation of state houses across the country and state lodges is a lot of money. And so, Mr. Speaker, I'm saying that this is a calling to all of us as members of parliament to take these chances much more seriously in future. Having said that, Mr. Speaker, we are being served with quinine to cure malaria. And I wanted to ask members to look at these estimates in terms of the reinstatement of the Kenya shillings 1.5 million of the judiciary budget, 1.5 billion of the judiciary budget. Honorable member, a short while ago you saw the Chief Justice crying that the development budget for the judiciary had been killed to zero. And I want to confirm to members that this development budget and these court developments, Honorable Speaker, Honorable Wanga is too loud in our consultations. I'm being disrupted by Honorable Wanga. Yes. Thank you, thank you, Speaker. Too loud in our consultations. Honorable Speaker, the courts being built across the country were not courts being established by the judiciary, but were in fact the initiative of this parliament through Justice and Legal Affairs that we have those courts. The truth is that even as we speak, Honorable Speaker, The matter which was before court in Homa Bay concerning the unfortunate murder of Sharon Otieno has had to come to Nairobi. Why, Mr. Speaker? Because we have no court where the accused and the judiciary can be secure as they do the thing. Because it is proposed that the judiciary is to be given money. Mr. Speaker, I know my position in the afternoon will not change, but I want to request members that for the sake of this budget, the development budget of the judiciary, we support this particular one and we move forward. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Chair of Health. Chair of Health. Vice Chair. Honorable Misra.
Thank you, Speaker, sir. Today, I support the hard work and the smart work by the committee, what they did. But I will tell you that we parliamentarians should be very, very careful for the next time. Because number one, we have to stop the corruption, and the people who have taken our money should give them back to the government. Number one. Number two, we should spend our money in a smart way. And the terms and conditions of the loan, which internationally we are getting, we should be very, very wise to sign the loan agreement. Because we know that as international community, some of them, they are giving us very easily the loans. But the terms and conditions, we have to be very careful, otherwise we'll be in trouble in future. Next is, in this crisis of our loan, why not we revisit the terms and conditions of the loan to extend the loan, the lifespan of the loan, and also reduce the interest. Having said that, health is paramount. As one of our big four agenda of our president and our president's legacy, we would have been happy that if we would have not reduced the health budget. But however, we will have another supplement budget for health, and we request so that where we'll reach and meet the health. With this, I support the motion. Thank you, sir.
You know, the member who is coming to the dispatch box. The member for, as we wait, because we are almost getting to the time, the member for Bomachoge. Honour members, remember you are the ones who voted to have this motion for 2 hours, 15 minutes. You gave 2 hours, 15 minutes. So when the time comes, there's no more debate. You will go to the next step, which is Committee of Supply, which again is further debate. Those of you who may have this, who may know how this operates, it's still an opportunity for you to debate, but in a much more focused manner, going through, looking at the proposals with regard to various departments and programs. Now, honourable members, it's very difficult for me to be able to hear what members are saying, and then also tete. Now it's now, no. There's no problem with a member rising on a point of order. Now, honourable member says, Honourable Otieno Omolo, what is your point of order?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, understanding order number 207,
and indeed in line with your direction. Mr. Speaker, understanding Order 207, particularly subsection 6, all the chairpersons of committee are by right invited to the, to the committee on budgeting. And the minutes we have show that most of them did. Mr. Speaker, when then the limited time of 2 hours is taken by most of the chairmen, where then does that not rob us of our opportunity to contribute on this? Mr. Chairman, Mr. Speaker, I urge that the chairpersons must be taken to have contributed during the meeting of the committee, so that the remaining time can be spent by the rest of the members. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Previously, the Honorable Otiende Amolo, you looked extremely agitated. And it is okay for you to feel so agitated because you're not a chair of any of the committees. But your point is well taken. Your point is well taken, and indeed that's why majority of those who have contributed are not chairs of the committees. Majority. Please, it is good it's also good to know what it is I'm saying. I said majority. But the point raised by the Honorable Otiende Amolo is a valid one. It should not be taken as indicting the chairpersons who have contributed. But, honorable members, you had said 2 hours, 15 minutes. You can't say no. You pass the motion. And you say even what you did, you still don't want to go by what you passed. Honorable Chris Wamalwa, also, you see, and this is what is similarly the point being raised by the Honorable Otiende Amolo. Now, the way you sit in a row there, when all of you have an opportunity to speak, the other members behind you feel like they don't belong. So, Honorable Amalwa, when you see me pick a member behind you, please feel that they also have capacity to interrogate the motion. They are your members, and they belong validly and legitimately to the House. So they are members of the House, please. Honorable Amalwa. No, it is not that if you don't speak, this House will come down crumbling. No. I mean, you should have faith in your colleagues who are also contributing, Honorable Amalwa. And in any event, we are still proceeding with the business. Honourable members, I think you see, this is the problem when so many of you have come to consult us. Sometimes I don't even know who last spoke, and I think the person who last spoke was from this side. You see, there is also the question of a few corners of the country. The member there, the member for, is it Bomachoge? Bomachoge. You could speak for a few minutes before the time ends.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. I'm worried because
no, don't get worried. Contribute. Go straight to the motion. Your time is running.
Speaker, sir. I stand to oppose in zero effect this motion. Number one, I don't want to take more time. It's very much unfair. I want to acknowledge the Committee of Budget. It's doing good work. But my worry is it's reducing most critical areas affecting our Kenyans. If you see this reduction in this report, you will find at the moment Kenyans are crying very much heavy taxation. At the moment we are discussing a very important bill in the afternoon about zero. Everybody here is zero. Now if you reduce the road network If you reduce emergency intervention of roads by 80.7 million, remember a country without a road network in this country is not a developing country. If we can reduce CDF, you reduce affirmative action for women, you also come reduce electricity, then is that a country we're having? To me, I stand to oppose this in the strongest voice possible. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Now, honour members, member for Tharaka, you have less than 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to support the motion that we do adopt this report. First and foremost, my observation is that this supplementary budget is really a reflection of the austerity measures that we do have to undertake so as to comply with the major budget that is before us. We have had cuts proposed across this section. We have had to deal with the reduction of the allocations we had made in respect of the budget. And while we say we can live with this, we have to look more to what is ahead of us. We have to tighten our belts because it is proposed that we will be taxed more. But my own reflection on this is that we should actually ensure that the citizens are not taxed more than they are being taxed today. We have to try and live with what we have always had and what we have in our purses. Also, we must emphasize that as a country, we have to fight corruption, which is an endemic in this country where citizens are taxed and the money falls into the hands of corrupt individuals who actually misappropriate that particular money meant for development. We have also to avoid and run away from wastage of our funds. We ensure that whatever funds we do have are put into the correct usage, which is for the benefit of everyone. While I do support the report, it is very important to note that we as a country are against higher taxations. We have also to fight corruption, and we have also to ensure that our funds are used properly so that Kenyans can benefit. We are going to the constituencies where we would want to see development. We are going to the constituencies where our constituents are waiting for us, and they are crying that they do not want to experience any more taxations. However, because we have to go by the austerity measures, I do support this motion and urge that we do move on to look at the supplementary appropriations bill. I support.
Honorable Olagwaloch.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the tenet of modern democracy is that there should be no taxation without representation. And that is why we are before this House. Mr. Speaker, I look at the report that we are debating, and I've listened very carefully to those who support and those who oppose. What comes to my mind, Mr. Speaker, is this. For the last 7 days or so, the media have been reporting on these deliberations in a way that is slanted against this House, not knowing the fact that this House is the one that can save the country. And I want to say that the committee under my good friend, Honorable Ichungwa, has looked at the report that has put us under fire. The spotlight is on this House, arising from what came from the Treasury. And I wonder, Mr. Speaker, if it was not for this committee, and we left this alone in the hands of C.S. Rotich and his mandarins at the Treasury, where would the country be led? I've looked, Mr. Speaker, at what is in this report, and I've seen the difficulty that this House has got to undergo. We have got to toe the thin line between analyzing what we are able to raise and what we are able to spend. I've looked and I listened very carefully to the chairman of JLAC, Honorable Cheptum talking about the difficulties in the judiciary. I listened to Honorable Kaluma Mr. Speaker, having analyzed all this, I want to say that we have to take this with the pill that is bitter. I wish to support this report, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable members, in terms of the resolution passed by this House this morning, it is now time for the mover to reply. It is time for the mover to reply, and accordingly call upon him to do so. But of course, honourable members, just to alert you that even after this, we are still proceeding with the supply. So those members who have not spoken, you still have a chance to express yourself one way or other with regard to the supply department by department. So you've not completely lost out. So don't feel completely gloomy. Proceed.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker, and allow me, Honourable Speaker, to thank the many members who have contributed, both those who have supported this motion and those who have raised their concerns, and I particularly note the concerns raised by Honourable Miremba Mboko, Honourable Osotsi, especially on the TVETs. It is indeed true that we did reduce the budget that was allocated to TVETs by R1 billion, and that basically was money that we had allocated for hiring of teachers for the TVETs. What we have done in the spirit of rationalizing this budget is to look at how many of our technical training institutes are completed, equipped and ready to admit students, and how many teachers they need. And we therefore left a budget of 1 billion shillings and taken away R1 billion so that we don't hire teachers who have nowhere to be placed. As we roll out the budget and as more TTIs are completed, we will be able to reinstate this amount and be able to hire more teachers for this particular sector. The question Honourable Soti raised on increased allocations to the health department, you know the health sector is one of our Agenda 4 pillars in universal healthcare, and that is why you'll see there's an increased allocation in healthcare up to the tune of about 11 billion shillings. Honourable Speaker, the Konza City, again, as Honourable Soti said, is one of the areas that we reduced a figure of 400 million shillings, which was development towards the completion of Konza City. And again, as I said, Honourable Speaker, these are monies that should revenues increase, we are bound to be able to return them. And Honourable Speaker, it's important to mention to members that this is just but the first supplementary budget. We can do as many supplementary budgets as we want in the course of the financial year. But it was imperative this time, Honourable Speaker, because of the shortfall in revenue, to be able to have a supplementary budget that you cut part of our budget expenditure, and it is only reflective of the shortfall in revenue because of the issues that we'll be addressing this afternoon on the VAT bill. And therefore, Honourable Speaker, it's important also to mention, should the finance bill, whatever decision the House makes in the afternoon, should we not be able to raise even the 8% VAT on the finance bill, we would be forced to even do further budget cuts. And that is why it is very important, Honourable Speaker, that we do understand that, and I urge members to support this bill, this motion, Honourable Speaker, and support this report for us to be able to appropriate money in a way that our budget is balanced and we show the world that we are a country that has very good fiscal discipline. With that, Honourable Speaker, I beg to reply.
Honourable members, once again, because of the resolution of the House, you then proceed, in the morning, you proceed straight to the next order. So I'll call upon the clerk to call out the order.
Order number 11, Committee of Supply.
members, order. Order, members. Members, we are now in Committee of Supply. We are in Committee of Supply for the 2018-2019 supplementary estimates for the year ending 30th June 2019.
Vote 1011, the Presidency. Vote 1021, State Department for Interior. Vote 1023, State Department for Correctional Services. Vote 1024, State Department for Immigration and Citizen Services. Vote 1032, State Department for Devolution. Vote 1035, State Department for ASOL, arid and semi-arid areas. Vote 1041, Ministry of Defense. Vote 1052, Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Vote 1064, State Department for Vocational and Technical Training. Vote 1066, State Department for Early Learning and Basic Education.
Honorable members, order, members, order. I propose a question. I propose a question that the votes as read out be approved. Mover. Honorable Ishungwa. Honorable Lesonet, are you standing in for him?
Yeah, you move.
Madam Chair, I beg to move.
I propose a question that the supply granted for the services for the year ending 30th June 2019 in respect of the votes as read out be reduced as specified in the order paper. I'll go on to put the question, which is that the supply granted for the services for the year ending 30th June 2019 in respect of the votes as read out be reduced as specified in the order paper. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Aye. Will as many as of a contrary opinion say nay? Yes. The ayes have it.
Vote 1067, State Department for Research and University Education. Vote 1071, the National Treasury. Vote 1072, State Department for Planning. Vote 1081, Ministry of Health. Vote 1091, State Department for Infrastructure. Vote 1092, State Department for Transport. Vote 1093, State Department for Maritime Affairs. Vote 1096, State Department for Housing, Urban Development and Public Works. Vote 1107, Ministry of Water Services and Sanitation. Vote 1108, Ministry of Environment and Forestry. Vote 1112, Ministry of Lands and Physical Planning.
Honorable members, I propose the question which is that the vote as read out be approved. Mover.
Honorable Speaker, I beg to move that we adopt the votes as read out.
I go on to propose a question that the supply granted for the services for the year ending 30th June 2019 in respect of the votes as read out be reduced as specified in the order paper. I go on to put a question which is that the supply granted for the services for the year ending 30th June 2019 in respect of the vote as read out be reduced as specified in the order paper. Will as many of that opinion say aye? Aye. Will as many as of a contrary opinion say nay? Nay. The ayes have it.
Vote 1121, Ministry of Information, Communications and Technology. Vote 1132, State Department for Sports Development. Vote 1152, State Department for Energy. Vote 1162, State Department for Livestock. Vote 1164, State Department for Fisheries, Aquaculture and the Blue Economy. Vote 1165, State Department for Crop Development. Vote 1167, State Department for Irrigation. Vote 1168, State Department for Agricultural Research.
I propose a question, which is that the votes as read out be approved. Mover.
Honorable Chair, I beg to move that the votes as read out be approved. As read out.
Very well. I propose the question, which is that the supply granted for the services for the year ending 30th June 2019 in respect of the votes as read out be reduced as specified in the order paper.
Put the question.
Okay, that's a mood. I'll go on to put the question, which is that the supply granted for the services for the year ending 30th June 2019 in respect of the votes as read out be reduced as specified in the order paper. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Aye. Will as many as of a contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it.
Vote 1173, State Department for Cooperatives. Vote 1175, State Department for Industrialization. Vote 1185, State Department for Social Protection. Vote 1192, State Department for Mining. Vote 1193, State Department for Petroleum. Vote 1204, Ministry of Tourism and Wildlife. Vote 1211, State Department for Public Service and Youth. Vote 1212, State Department for Gender.
I propose the question that the votes as read out to be approved. Chair.
Honorable Chair, I beg to move that the votes be approved as read out.
And I go on to propose a question, which is that the supply granted for the services for the year ending 30th June 2019 in respect of the votes as read out be reduced as specified in the order paper.
Put the question.
I'll go on to put the question, which is that the supply granted for the services for the year ending 30th June 2019 in respect of votes as read out be reduced as specified in the order paper. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Aye. Will as many as of a contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it.
Anasoma ngapi ngapi? Anasoma ngapi ngapi?
Vote 1261, the Judiciary.
I propose a question, which is that the vote on the Judiciary as read out be approved. Mover.
Honorable Chairperson, I beg to move that the votes as read out be approved.
And I propose a question, which is that the supply granted for the services for the year ending 30th June 2019 in respect of vote 1261 be increased as specified in the order paper.
Put the question.
I propose a question, which is that the supply granted for the services for the year ending 30th June 2019 in respect of vote 1261 be increased as specified in the order paper. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Aye. Will as many as of a contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it.
Where Millie?
Millie, we shall impeach you.
Vote 1251, Office of the Attorney General and Department of Justice. Vote 1311, Office of the Registrar of Political Parties. Vote 1321, Witness Protection Agency. Vote 2011, Kenya National Commission on Human Rights. Vote 2021, National Land Commission. Vote 2041, Parliamentary Service Commission. Vote 2042, National Assembly. Vote 2061, Commission on Revenue Allocation. Vote 2071, Public Service Commission.
Honorable members, I propose a question that the votes as read out be approved. Mover.
Honorable Chairperson, I beg to move that the votes as read out be approved.
I propose a question that the supply
Continue, ignore him.
That the supply granted for the services for the year ending 30th June 2019 in respect of the votes as read out be reduced as specified in the order paper.
Put the question.
I go on to put a question, which is that the supply granted for the services for the year ending 30th June 2019 in respect of the votes as read out be reduced as specified in the order paper. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Aye. Will as many as of a contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it.
Vote 2081, Salaries and Remuneration Commission. Vote 2091, Teachers Service Commission. Vote 2101, National Police Service Commission. Vote 2111, Auditor General.
I propose a question that the votes as read out be approved. Chair. Give him the mic.
Honorable Chairperson, I beg to move that the votes as read out be approved.
I propose a question that the supply granted for the services for the year ending 30th June 2019 in respect of the votes as read out be reduced as specified in the order paper.
Put the question. Put the question. Put the question.
I'll go on to put the question, which is that the supply granted for the services for the year ending 30th June 2019 in respect of votes as read out be reduced as specified in the order paper. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Aye. Will as many as of a contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it.
Vote 21, Controller of Budget. Vote 21, Commission on Administrative Justice. Vote 21, National Gender and Equality Commission. Vote 21, Independent Policing Oversight Authority.
I propose the question, which is that the votes as read out be approved. Mover.
Honorable Chairperson, I beg to move that the votes as read out be approved.
And I go on to propose a question, which is that the supply granted for the services for the year ending 30th June 2019 in respect of the votes as read out be reduced as specified in the order paper.
Put the question.
I'll proceed to put the question, which is that the supply granted for the services for the year ending 30th June 2019 in respect of the votes as read out be reduced as specified in the order paper. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Aye. Will as many as of a contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. Honorable Mover, other members, I now call upon the mover to move reporting. Chair.
Honorable Chairperson, I beg to move that the Committee of Supply do report to the House its consideration of the supplementary estimates for the financial year 2018-2019 and its approval thereof with amendments.
I go on to put a question, the question for reporting, which is that the Committee of Supply do report to the House its considerations of the supplementary estimates for the financial year 2018-2019 and its approvals thereof with amendments. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Aye. Will as many as of a contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it.
Chairperson.
Honorable Speaker, I beg to report that the Committee of the Supply has considered the supplementary estimates for the financial year 2018-2019, approved the same with amendments, and pursuant to the provisions of Article 223 of the Constitution of Kenya and Standing Orders 240, 240A, and 243, approves that the supply granted for the services for the year ending 30th June 2019 be reduced by a sum not exceeding Kenya shillings 37 billion 603 million 662,418 in respect of the expenditure, recurrent and development for votes as approved in the schedule.
Mover.
Honorable Speaker, I beg to move that the House do agree with the Committee of Supply in its consideration of the supplementary estimates for the financial year 2018-2019, and pursuant to the provisions of Article 223 of the Constitution of Kenya and Standing Orders 240, 240A, and 243, approves that the supply granted for the services for the year ending 30th June 2019 be reduced by a sum not exceeding Kenya shillings 37,603,662,418 in respect of the expenditure, recurrent and development for votes as approved in the schedule. I also request Honorable Moses Lesonet, my Vice Chair, to second the motion for agreement with the report of the Committee of Supply.
Honorable Lesonet.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I second.
Honourable members, I propose the question, which is that the House do agree with the committee in the same report. Now, members, seems like the desire of the House that I put the question, which I hereby do. I put the question, which is that the House do agree with the committee in the same report. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Will as many as of the contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. Honourable members, But we cannot go to the main. We can't go to the other business. Honourable members, please. You know, it's good to understand. I think at this rate, honourable members, it looks like the more we get experience, the more we forget. I hope we don't. The member for Mavoko wants, when I am on my feet, to also be whispering something to me. It's not possible, but you can follow. Honourable members, the net effect of what you've done now is, having passed that motion on supply, this gives room for the supplementary appropriations bill to be prepared, ready for tabling before the House this afternoon at 2:30 p.m. And just to avoid a situation whereby members may want to rise claiming to be technicians, this being a bill on supplementary estimates, appropriations, it is permitted to go to all the stages without leave of the House. So I don't want any member to rise in their place claiming that there is no leave. No, that is automatically granted. You did that by passing the standing orders, and therefore there will be no need. Let's just deal with the appropriations bill when it is brought before the House, because now this paves the way for its publication, and there's no There's not, again, time for, say, pre-publication scrutiny, consulting villagers and such like stuff. So please don't come, nobody should come to address me on the issue, because deal with it now. And I would want it, as soon as it is published, those of you, I know there are many technicians now in that area, you can now start looking at it with a tooth comb. Therefore, honourable members, we had passed a motion that we would sit up to 1:30 p.m. subject to us completing the business, which the House has just concluded. Therefore, there being no other business, the House stands adjourned until 2:30 this afternoon.
Right, the House has unanimously agreed that the proposals, the vote that the Budget and Appropriation Committee passed last night, working all through the night, and the report just hitting the floor of the Parliament this morning, has been passed. Now, the vote concerns a lot of areas which they sought to reduce the initial allocations, and which the House has now approved and will take effect. Now, that is what the House has been considering this morning. The VAT bill, as it may be, and obviously it's going to attract a lot of attention later this afternoon on the floor of the National Assembly, will be discussed, and that also is expected to be quite a heated debate. Now, this debate this morning had a lot of contributions, and I must say from the onset, the biggest winners in this supplementary budget, the first of its kind, because this is the first time the country is having a supplementary budget barely 3 months after the budget was passed. Now, the biggest winners is the judiciary. However, it's also seen as sort of a precursor to what will happen this afternoon, because also the MPs and the Budget and Appropriation Committee has ensured that any emoluments, any personal monies touching to the members of Parliament has not been touched, and they have given the reason through the minority leader at the National Assembly, John Mbadi, that because the executive also did not touch monies that directly benefit them, such as salaries, such as allowances, well, it was indeed possible that the National Assembly was not going to touch those monies. And of course, the National Assembly has been seen as sort of being massaged by the Budget Committee ahead of the debate on the VAT bill this afternoon. And a lot of those people who have lost include the office of the President, or the departments of government that have lost includes the office of the President. Now, they have basically cut a lot, and in summary, the amount of money that has been cut is to the tune of 37,603,662,418. And in summary also, let me just give you a breakdown from reduction. The total recurrent expenditure for the financial year 2018-2019 has gone down by 9 billion shillings, 63,228,000. The reduction, as I said, on capital expenditure is 28,540,434,000. And of course, the overall reduction, as I mentioned, and the savings that is expected is about 37 billion shillings. And just before we take a break, let me give you a breakdown on some of the departments where the votes have been affected. Now, the presidency is going to lose about 323 million shillings. The State Department for Interior is losing about 376 million shillings. Correctional Services is about 255 million shillings. And as we end, let me just mention a few more, including the National Treasury that was responsible for this. They're losing about 6 billion shillings. And of course, the Minister of Health budget has been cut by around 11 billion, now settling not more than 22,043,000. And the total amount that has been allocated to the Health Ministry as at now is about 11 billion shillings. Minister of Defense has about 42 million shillings out. And finally, the State Department on Vocational and Training is about 1 billion shillings that has been cut. Now, the simplest explanation that has been given on this is the fact that the money that was allocated, the billion that has been cut off was basically to employ more teachers. However, there's a rider from the Budget and Appropriation Committee. They say as soon as the monies are available, they will revert back and definitely they will reallocating this money. So that's what we have right now. Ken Muredi is on the other side. We're going to be speaking to him. Plus, the Senate is moving to the counties. We're going to have a perspective from the chairman, Moses Kajwang, later on. But first, we take a break right here on NTV Today. We'll be right back with all the details. Stay with us. Hello and welcome to the continuation of NTV Today. My name is Ken Mijungu, live from the National Assembly. With me right here is Kennedy Muredi, who is also on standby. Olive Barrows is at Eldama Park. She's following up the story of the arrests of former Nairobi Governor Dr. Evans Kidero. We're going to be speaking to Olive Barrows shortly, and of course, Sean Kadovilis is in our Nairobi studio. He'll be joining us later with sports. But let's come back here. There's been a discussion this morning. The supplementary budget has been passed by the National Assembly. A lot of things have been affected, and most fundamentally, the judiciary is the winner of this. We now bring back Ken Muredi, who has been watching this with me right here at the National Assembly, for a brief on what transpired in the morning and, of course, what to expect in the afternoon. Ken?
Reduced it by 37 billion, up from the recommended one by President Uhuru Kenyatta of 55 billion. We are looking to see what will be happening in Parliament. Is it going to be the same as it has happened this morning? There were people who were actually opposed to that bill, but they're talking in hushed tones. In parliamentary procedure, for you to reject, or if you feel like your voice was muzzled when the question was put, that is the ayes and the noes, probably if you feel like your voice was muzzled, you have the opportunity to stand on your feet, and if you are enough, then probably the Speaker will be calling for division, and that did not happen, despite the fact that there are members of Parliament who are not happy with the proposals that were brought forth. Then none of them stood to show their dissatisfaction with the process that has happened in Parliament when the House had gone on a committee of the whole. So what does that basically mean? That basically means that their displeasure in what happened, or their displeasure in the budget cuts that were proposed, were only on mouth but did not follow the procedures that were needed. This afternoon, probably it is going to be the same. Will they be able to raise the required 233 members that are needed to overturn a presidential memorandum? Probably they would, probably they will not. One of the things that happened, and Ken Mijungu has expressly spoke about it, is that in the supplementary estimates that were being read in Parliament when they were discussing that supplementary budget, is that it was seen expressly that it was almost the budget committee was massaging the egos of the members of Parliament in the perks that they were giving them. Remember, there was a recommendation to cut the CDF money by about 6 billion. It has now been reduced to 2.4 billion. Now, it was being reduced from 35 billion that was the initial amount, but right now it has been reduced by 2.4 billion to 33.3 billion. Now, what does that mean? That means that that amount of money that members of Parliament will be getting is going to be 110 million per each constituency. That is the 290 constituencies. Now, that is not just so, it is not so much from the recommended percentage, that is 2.5% of the national budget that is given to the members of Parliament. Another thing that has not been touched is the personal emoluments for members of Parliament. So in the budget process, one of the things that they were being given so that they can make sure that this thing passes is that some of the things that touch on their welfare have not been touched so much. So it is also a question of what happened. Another thing that has angered some of the members of Parliament who have opted to talk to media are not on the floor of the House because they believe that their voices will not have been heard, is that there was a 1.5 billion amount that was set aside for cheap gas. That money has been scrapped. And with this, it means that probably it is going to hurt more and more Kenyans. There is the other aspect that has also been added that will be discussed in the afternoon, and that is the 18 shillings per litre of kerosene to cater for anti-adulteration. So these matters that are here is that probably Kenyans will be suffering more to fund this budget, despite the cut of 37 billion that has actually just been effected by the National Assembly. There is another process that now goes in. These estimates are going to be passed in the form of a bill. Then they will be taken back to the committee and it will be discussed. These issues, as we are talking about them, is that they are going to have that effect, but that effect will only be felt if this matter is going to be discussed further through the finance bill that is going to be discussed in the afternoon. But the elephant question is, will they be able to raise the 233 membership that is required to overturn a presidential memorandum? That is the big question as we head into the afternoon session, and it is going to be answered only if these members of parliament are going to marshal that number. You remember that the leaders of these particular parties outside parliament, including President Uhuru Kenyatta, Raila Odinga, that is the ODM leader, Kalonzo Musyoka, all of them were speaking with one voice in calling on their members to actually come and pass this presidential memorandum. But the members of parliament say that they want to be on the side, or they are reading the mood of Kenyans, that Kenyans do not want that memorandum to be passed. Whether they will stand with them is a question that we can only wait to be answered when they vote in the National Assembly. Back to you, Ken.
Right, Kennedy Muredi, thank you very much. And indeed, a good question. Will the National Assembly be able to raise a quorum of 233 members this afternoon, either to drop that memorandum from the president, which has a different translation? We're waiting on that. And of course, the Homa Bay Member of Parliament, Peter Kaluma, is right here with me. We'll be talking about in a short while. But let's talk about the raid on the former Nairobi Governor, Dr. Evans Kidero. Now, the police are said, and EACC officials are said to have come there from 2 a.m. this morning. They took him away at around 11:30 a.m. When he spoke briefly with the reporters, Evans Kidero said that he has not been arrested. Let's find out more from Olive Barrows, who's been following this story throughout the morning for us. Olive, good afternoon. Good to see you from Eldama. Talk to us about the situation. Where is Evans Kidero right now, and what exactly has transpired in the morning?
Okay, as you've mentioned, Ken, we're outside the Eldama Park building where the former Nairobi Governor Evans Kidero has his offices. The governor and DCI and EACC detectives got here over an hour ago, and that was after they first raided his home in Muthaiga, and that was at 6 a.m. When we got there at about 10 a.m., it was very quiet. Even the neighbors were asking us what's going on when they saw the media presence. Kidero, a very belligerent Kidero, thereafter left his home, his residence, and said he would not take it lying down. He has accused the authorities, that is the Director of Public Prosecutions more specifically, of lacking evidence in the charges that were preferred against him on August the 9th before the courts. And he says that is the reason they've now resorted to raiding his residence and now his office. As I said, he's accompanied by his lawyer, Tom Ojienda, and he said he will not take it lying down. And he proved that by refusing to get into the EACC Land Rover. He insisted on taking his own vehicle to come here to the Eldama Park, where they're still engaged in that activity of the search. And he was also telling the EACC detectives and the DCI detectives to keep their hands off of him. So that's what we have so far. We are yet to hear from the DCI or the EACC what it is exactly they're looking for.
All right, Olive Barrows, thank you very much. And of course, Dr. Evans Kidero said that he's being harassed by the EACC official because the first raid did not yield anything. Thanks, Olive Barrows is on that story for us. Let's come back to the National Assembly. And I'm joined by the Homa Bay Member of Parliament, Peter Kaluma, who was at the chambers during this debate. And Mheshimiwa, my first question to you, and indeed I have only two questions because it's been debated extensively. We have seen a lot of benefits, a lot of wins for the members of parliament. For example, even the women, right? We have seen emoluments not touched. And of course, we've seen the CDF at 2.5%. Initially, the members of parliament were worried. Kenyans reading this mood outside there think that you're being massaged ahead of the debate in the afternoon. Could this be the true perspective?
We have reduced the operations and maintenance except the judiciary. The judiciary is the only institution we've not taken any money from.
Okay.
Instead, we have given the judiciary money. CDF is not for a member of parliament. Remember what I said?
Okay, I'm told your mic is not picking. We are getting to, I'm here with Honorable Peter Kaluma. We're speaking to him shortly. And of course, you can take this other mic. Try that. Is that okay now?
Yes.
All right. So you're explaining to me only the judiciary has not been touched.
Yes, in terms of the executive and parliament, we have reduced the operations and maintenance budget in respect of those two arms of government by 16%.
Okay.
There is no money that has gone to members of parliament. In fact, we have had a reduction. CDF is being mistaken to be a fund for members of parliament. I tell you, can go throughout the country. They only fund building schools, building roads in the rural access is CDF, and members of parliament are truly no longer in the CDF committee. The same to those other funds. The Affirmative Action Fund, in fact, has been reduced from what it ought to have been.
Okay. So obviously, and there was a lot of acrimony about the fact that the tertiary institutions 1 billion shillings off, and the explanation was that $1 billion shillings was just meant for the teachers. So because they are not hiring the teachers now, they can as well get it out. But I'm more interested in the aspect of the fact that they're saying that this is not the last supplementary budget. In case there will be need, they'll be able indeed to get more money to those departments. It cuts across, right?
Yes. Through supplementary budget, you reorganize and rearrange the budget as appropriation or expenditure goes. So this is truly not the last.
Okay.
Going forward, if government is facing any difficulties, we can go back and reorganize, shift monies from one department of government to the other. So this is not the last.
Okay, this is not the last. And just going to the debate in the afternoon, the MP said their conscience is clear. I know you're still maintaining where you're voting.
Oh, I'm very clear. It will be a no.
Okay.
Nothing has changed.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, and that's Peter Kaluma of Homa Bay, the Homa Bay Member of Parliament, speaking to us right here about what transpired in the morning. And of course, there are a lot of other things that are happening in Parliament this afternoon. So we'd just like to tell you to keep watch. And of course, we will be bringing you that live in the afternoon. Now, we're coming back to talk briefly to the Senate. They are expected to have their sittings outside. They're headed to the Rift, and we have several governors who will be appearing before them. Before that discussion, let's take you back to studio where Sean Caravilis is standing by.
When you need some company, you can chill with me. We can make sweet memories. If you ride with me, I will be there.
Kenyans Petty Andanda and Alban Jogo will face off with Burundi's Shakula Karuba and Boris Aguma of Uganda, respectively. Real Madrid got their post-Cristiano Ronaldo Champions League campaign off to a solid start after thrashing Roma 3-0. Meanwhile, Ronaldo was sent off against Valencia, although his new club Juventus still eased to victory against Valencia with a 2-0 win. And there were mixed results for the Manchester clubs, with United winning while City surprisingly lost on match day 1.
Madrid, who open up their quest to win.
Real Madrid got their Champions League defence off to a winning... Kemi Jungu is at Parliament.
All right, Sean Caravelis, thank you very much. And we're still right here live from the National Assembly, where I'm now joined by Senator Moses Kajwang to talk about an activity that they are likely to carry out beginning of next week. And Senator, I'm more interested, at the time we're talking about austerity, why is it necessary to move your sittings out to the counties?
Thank you, Ken. The Senate and Parliament as a whole, as an outreach program, we want to take the Senate to the grassroots. We want to bring it closer to the people. It is part of public participation, which is a constitutional principle. In fact, when the Senate and legislative bodies go out to the people, it has been proven that in the long term, decision makers are in a position to make decisions that are more efficient, that are more cost effective. It is not just a matter of sitting in Nairobi and then running parliament from an ivory tower. We believe that if Senate is the body that safeguards the interests of counties, we also need to go out to the counties. And it's not going to be a terribly expensive undertaking because we are going to be meeting in the County Assembly Hall of Uasin Gishu. We are not going to put up a new building or Bedouin tents.
But you're going to be paid allowances, which incidentally has not been touched by the supplementary budget. But I'm more interested. This is about the County Public Accounts and Investment Committee sitting at the counties. And this is about audit queries. Why are you not inviting the governors over to Nairobi?
We have been doing that. In fact, if you have followed our proceedings here in Parliament in Committee Room 5, every week there are at least 3 governors who appear before our committee. But there's one shortcoming that we have noted, that when we sit in Nairobi and we are looking at reports from a theoretical perspective, sometimes we are not able to get to the value for money considerations that the Auditor General has raised. When we go to Uasin Gishu, for example, and we sit with Governor Mandago and his team, we can even visit projects that they have undertaken using public funds, and that puts us in a better position to conduct oversight and to provide proactive proposals that can help the county governors in executing their constitutional duties.
That's going to be very practical. So take us through who you expect to meet while you are in Uasin Gishu. Which governors are coming before you and which days, and what specifically are you looking to get from them?
The Public Accounts and Investments Committee shall on Tuesday meet the governor for Baringo, on Wednesday meet the governor for Uasin Gishu, and on Thursday meet the governor for West Pokot. On Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday we'll also be having our plenary sessions, but other committees of the House, for example, the Health Committee shall pay a visit to the Moi Teaching and Referral Hospital. The Agriculture Committee shall be talking to maize farmers or on agricultural issues, and all the committees of Senate are going to be busy during this time. We want the people of Uasin Gishu to believe and to know and to appreciate that there is a Senate that has been established to represent their interest, and this is not just for Uasin Gishu. We chose Uasin Gishu to be a reflection of the region, and we'll be having members of county assemblies, governors and chief executive officers of county functions coming from the surrounding counties of Trans Nzoia, from Nandi, from Baringo, from West Pokot and Kakamega.
All right. So after Uasin Gishu, do you expect to go to other regions or other counties?
Yes, it is our strategy that in the 5 years of the term of the Senate, we shall carry out a public plenary in at least one of the regions of this republic. So now that we have done Uasin Gishu, we'll probably decide to go to the coast or maybe go to Western Kenya. I think it is a decision that we shall make once we come back and we take stock of the achievements of this outreach in Uasin Gishu.
All right, very comprehensive indeed. And before I let you go, I must drag you into the VAT debate this afternoon. Where you stand?
Well, this is much more than VAT. As a senator, I know that the memorandum of the president reduces the equitable share to county governments by 9 billion Kenya shillings. I am not happy about that as a senator because I've always felt that counties need to get more money because a lot of money is remaining in Nairobi for functions that have already been devolved. So from that principle alone, I do not support the president's memorandum. I support a situation where we are giving our counties more money, but with the rider. Counties must be more efficient, counties must be more creative, counties must be more prudent in the manner in which they utilize the resources sent to them.
All right, and as I let you go now, when you appeared on my show, we spoke about this extensively, and of course, the kind of wastage we see in the government. Do you think these moves or this move is enough to stem it going forward?
I don't think it is, because by focusing on Parliament and cutting its budget by 15%, chopping 5 billion out of Parliament, and then going to the Auditor General and chopping its budget by 100 million, and it is the Auditor General that has the duty to flag out the wastage. I think there needs to be a conversation. And the clergy has called for a conversation on corruption. The politicians have brought the Building Bridges initiative. There needs to be a convergence so that we define what it means to be a state and public officer. A public officer is not defined by the number of cars or the size of bodyguards and the number of bodyguards that accompany him. Okay. We must redefine that so that it becomes service to the people rather than a show of force. And,
all right.
And that show of force is where the waste comes from.
Thank you very much. Senator Moses Kajwang of Homa Bay County speaking to us. The County Public Investment Committee is headed to the counties. And as he mentioned, Governor Mandago Kiptis and Lonyangapuo will be appearing Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Thank you very much for speaking to us. And thank you for watching. We're right here at the National Assembly. Coming up next is our team of NTV Sasa. Salim Swale is already here. Stay with us. We'll be back after this break. And remember, in the afternoon, that grand debate on the VAT bill. Stay with us. Good afternoon. My name is Ken Michungu.